Putin blow up the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant and is also preparing sabotage operations involving nuclear facilities in NATO countries.
These are very dangerous acts of terrorism. One can only imagine what would happen if we were to respond in kind. What would happen to this entire part of Europe?
If the Russian dictator loses the war, he could mine each of the 6 reactors at the plant and remotely detonate these devices, creating clouds of radioactive fallout that would quickly spread across all of Europe, but could also drift toward Russia itself.
The Russian Federation is already a nuclear terrorist state as it is. That's the point. The detonation, the deliberate sabotage of a nuclear facility, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, could mean, well, the actual collapse of the Putin regime, because in essence, this could be seen as a declaration not just of war against Europe, not just against the collective West, not just against the United States, but essentially against the entire world, because as you rightly pointed out, where would the cloud from such an explosion at the largest nuclear facility on the European continent go? It's simply impossible to calculate those risks.
The IAEA is constantly concerned about the risk of catastrophe, but as is well known, international law means nothing to Russia.
I have been worried, am still worried, and will continue to be worried about the situation at the nuclear power plant until things stabilize and become more predictable. Obviously, the physical integrity of the plant has been breached several times, whether accidentally or deliberately.
I have to say that our relationship with the IAEA is, to put it mildly, far from cloudless. And of course, we often see, well, among a number of IAEA documents, what can I say, double standards.
On the other hand, active hostilities continue, and the Russians themselves are actively spreading stories that Ukraine is allegedly shelling the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant every day. And if an accident happens, it certainly won't be the Russians' fault.
One of the locations of these spray pools was hit by a HIMARS strike, and we had to take it out for repairs and restore its functionality.
The Zaporizhzhia plant was literally on the brink of disaster when the armed forces of Ukraine shelled it on the 11th of August, and the fire seriously damaged one of the 2 cooling towers of the power plant. This is indeed a very serious situation. The Western world, unfortunately, looked at it quite frivolously.
Whether someone likes that the plant is under Russian control or not is another matter, and it has nothing to do with the threats to the nuclear and physical safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
Right now, we are guarding not only the plant, we are now defending not only our own interests, but also the interests of the residents of Donbas and Novorossiya. Right now, we are protecting all of them, all of Europe, and you could say the whole world, because if this accident were to happen, God forbid, it would affect the entire world.
Russia already considers the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant its own and is actively preparing plans to launch it and integrate it into the Russian power grid.
Rosenergoatom, part of the Rosatom State Corporation, has prepared a comprehensive multi-level plan for the phased commissioning of the nuclear power plant. And for us, there are no ambiguities there, nothing unknown to us. These are procedures we know very well.
In the near future, as soon as we push the fascists back a bit, we will have the opportunity to work here and provide economic support for the Zaporizhzhia region.
I believe that Mariupol and in time Zaporizhzhia with its capacities and Dnipropetrovsk, where our electricity used to go, will work for the benefit of our country, and our plant will be very, very timely and appropriate.
It's just that, yes, indeed, they faced a number of technical difficulties in order to launch it and operate it fully. But these tales that we're going to launch it now and even supply electricity to the central regions of Russia, where power is cut off by the hour, that's complete nonsense, and it's hardly realistic to do that at all. Most likely, this is just another propaganda myth.
At the same time, the occupiers are now holding their heads in their hands. Destroying the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant dam 2 years ago, they blocked their own path to restarting the plant.
Starting up the plant itself is not a problem, but we will need several months to restore the substation's periphery and the high voltage transmission towers that the enemy destroyed. And of course, another important point is that in any case, we need to raise the level of the Kakhovka reservoir because it has dropped by more than 11 meters And the cooling reservoir does exist. It is there, but it is not sufficient in volume for the nuclear power plant to operate normally, efficiently, and safely.
When they deliberately destroyed the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant itself and committed an act of ecocide, those were just the initial immediate consequences that unfolded. Indeed, the direct consequence is that there is not enough water in the reservoir, and as a result, the cooling systems at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant simply cannot be fully operated. In other words, they managed to seize it, but they cannot use it.
There is no doubt that Putin and his cronies are reckless enough to commit any crime, even the most horrific one. The only way to stop the evil is to act before it's too late.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Putin is at it again. Once again, he keeps talking about the scary stories that alliance countries tell their people.
Justifying their plans, the alliance leadership once again insists on some kind of threat from Russia, on some supposed possible invasion of Europe by us. They themselves fabricated this truly terrifying story and continue to repeat it year after year in order to deliberately deceive their own people and unjustly extract money from them.
Of course, that's probably why Putin is demanding more nuclear missiles.
Let's pay special attention here to our nuclear triad. Thus, the strategic missile forces will be supplied with modern air systems, and the aviation component of the strategic nuclear forces will be reinforced this year with upgraded Tuesday 160M missile carriers. In addition, serial production of the newest medium-range missile system, Oreshnik, is being launched.
But don't think this is just for show, it's all for the sake of sovereignty and security. Yes, exactly, for the security of the Russian Federation. It's just not clear from whom.
The Kremlin is very well and acutely aware that if it weren't for their formidable nuclear weapons, a much wider and more extensive range of weaponry and very significant resources such as considerable sanctions pressure from both the United States and European nations would undoubtedly have been employed and utilized against the Russian Federation. No one would be coddling Russia. That's why they're putting all their emphasis on nuclear weapons.
At a meeting with the military at the academy, Putin with a serious face said that Russia has everything, both delivery systems and warheads. But apparently all of that still isn't enough. Of course, all for the sake of security.
We also can't help but be concerned that a number of Western politicians continue to harbor plans for a strategic defeat of Russia. History just doesn't teach them anything.
But how real is the threat to the Russian Federation without missiles?
But there is no danger at all. Once again, no one wants to attack or is planning to attack the Russian Federation. It's vast, it's endless. Europe simply doesn't have enough people to, cross the entire Russian Federation, and then they'd have to develop it, invest money there. No one is going to do that. Absolutely no one. No one needs the Russian Federation's natural resources. It would be easier to buy them from someone else than to invest money and resources there. Besides, it's unclear what would even happen there. That's why all these threats are exaggerated.
Putin is once again playing the besieged fortress card. The whole world is the enemy, and apparently you can't do without the nuclear club. The strategy is as old as Putin himself. Intimidate, mobilize, and God forbid anyone doubts the greatness of the state.
Putin's logic is as follows. He once had an aide, a sort of negative genius, Vladislav Yuryevich Surkov, who once came up with the following maxim: it's much easier to unite people against someone than for someone or something. And that's exactly what the Russian Federation is doing. It's much easier to rally people around Putin when there's an external threat. This threat is fabricated, it's not real, but it is cultivated, and people start to unite around Putin. That's exactly what all of this is for.
It's also interesting where all of this took place. At an academy that specifically trains officers for the nuclear forces. It's symbolic that it is there that Putin delivers speeches about missiles and security. But the question arises, how much do all these loud words actually reflect the real state of the Russian army?
Numbers alone won't change anything. Whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, it doesn't really matter. Most likely, what the Russian Federation really needs is a delivery system. And that's where they really have problems. So, You have a nuclear bomb, you have it right there. It's just sitting in storage. There are about 5,500 of them. But when it comes to actually sending it to the enemy, you have nothing. How are you going to deliver it? You can't just load it onto a truck and drive it somewhere, I don't know, near Washington or New York. For that, you need some kind of super ultra modern missiles, Yars, Oreshnik, Angara, whatever. And that's exactly what the Russian Federation is focusing on.
Well, let's say producing more Yars missiles, Oreshnik missiles, and modernizing the Tuesday 160M strategic bombers. But how realistic is it right now in Russia to ramp up the production of these weapons?
No one knows. No one knows at all. That is, while they can still make regular missiles, they produce them, they buy electronics for everything else. As I said, with aircraft, as a specialist explained to me, it's simply impossible to make them. I was honestly surprised myself. They told me, no, it's not possible. The technology has been lost, people have already died, and those who are still alive have moved abroad and are old now. The equipment is also lost. The blueprints are gone, everything. They can't be recovered.
So missiles for security, and security through missiles. An endless cycle. But one question arises. What if tomorrow security is threatened again? Then what? More missiles, or maybe two Putins?